Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. I recently received an email from a subscriber, Pam Newbern Boyle. Pam's email invited me to tell the story of her great grandfather, Samuel Cox Newbern, a soldier who deserted the Union Army. She also included a significant amount of information about his life and military service. I'm grateful to Pam for sharing all that she did. And also her husband, who watches this program along with her regularly. There was one line in her email that really captured my attention. It goes like this, quote, "I wondered if you would perhaps be interested in what I would term a case of stolen valor, including a Civil War deserter," end quote. Answer is yes. It's unusual, in my experience, that families share information and discuss ancestors from the war who were involved in less than heroic deeds. My own trips down the research rabbit hole have uncovered all sorts of inappropriate activities, including murder, sexual misconduct, improper handling of government property, and just about every violation of the military codes ending in courts martial. Samuel Newbern's military crime, as mentioned, is desertion. Estimates I found note that somewhere in the neighborhood of about 200,000 to 270,000 Union soldiers deserted during the war. It's about 8 to 10% of the 2.6 million enlistments. Confederates, about the same level of desertion, estimates of over 100,000 deserters. So, doesn't matter what side you were on, desertion was a thing, and a pretty big thing. Newbern, a native of New Jersey who had moved with his family to Scott County, Iowa in 1855, married and had a daughter before the war. In January 1862, he left his young family and farm, as many young men did, and enlisted, in this case, in Company D of the 16th Iowa Infantry. Just weeks later, he and his still very green comrades fought at the Battle of Shiloh. According to a sketch in the regiment's history, it was one of those regiments which were sent into the most exposed position at Shiloh without having had any experience in warfare and assigned a place without a brigade formation. Its loss was heavy, but its action was excellent despite some confusion. Before the end of 1862, the 16th received praise for its conduct in another important engagement, the Battle of Iuka. In January 1863, not long after Iuka, Newbern deserted. There's no evidence that he ever returned to the army. His motivation for deserting is as of yet unknown. Did his courage fail him after seeing death and destruction at Shiloh and Iuka? Did he suffer some sort of a mental breakdown? Well, evidence supplied by Pam indicates Newbern was a prolific philanderer, leaving a trail of no less than 6 women and children spread across the country that he married and then left or divorced. Pam traced Newbern's trail after his desertion at Memphis, Tennessee in January of 1863. She writes that Newbern, quote, went to New Jersey, his home place, where he married Sarah Locke in 1864, apparently deserting his first wife and daughter. He left New Jersey and went back to Iowa about 1875, where he deserted his second wife. He married my great-grandmother, Frances Nelson, in 1875 in Iowa, and the family moved around Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota and had 3 children, including my grandfather. In 1890, Samuel said he was going out for a loaf of bread and didn't return for 20 years. My great-grandmother divorced him and remarried. Samuel seems to have moved around constantly, and I have records of him selling everything from mantles, that's lamp wicks, to popcorn across the country and back. After deserting my great-grandmother and their 3 children, Samuel moved to California, where he married and divorced twice more before moving out to New York and marrying for a 6th time. He settled in St. Louis, Missouri, where he talked with a reporter about his so-called Civil War record. That's what Pam had to say. That interview that she referred to at the end of her paragraphs appears in the October 30th, 1910 issue of the St. Louis Star and Times. Based on Pam's research and available records that I've looked over, this news report, this interview, is a rather tall tale. Here's how it reads. Samuel C. Newton, 1808 Olive Street, who once paid taxes on $300,000, is now dependent each day for the modest comforts of life in his old age upon the meager returns he gets from the manufacture of stove polish, which is sold by solicitors. Newbern is the son of a Quaker preacher. He is a native of the Quaker city, having taken a start in his checkered career in Philadelphia 72 years ago. Never a good Quaker himself, he chafed under the restraint of youthful environment and, after having ridden racehorses secretly for 2 years, ran away from home at age 14 and followed the racecourse as a profession for many years. He joined his fortunes with a gambler on the Mississippi in the old prosperous days of the river traffic. Not as a gambler, as he never indulged in this form of excitement. A prosperous river gambler took a fancy to the boy, and the two were associated together as father and son during prosperous years until his benefactor one night died with his boots on because he arose when the lie was passed over the card table. His opponent was afraid of a gunplay and got busy first. Newbern visited St. Louis in 1854 and from this city went to St. Joseph, Missouri, where he joined a caravan on the Santa Fe Trail, making numerous trips into the undeveloped country. Once he was a prisoner in the hands of hostile Indians for several months. He bears an evidence of his captivity in the stump of a thumb, which he surrendered as a penalty for susceptibility to the blandishments of fair woman. While an Indian captive, Newbern thought a damsel of the tribe was making goo-goo eyes at him. He went her one better, he said, and the daughter of the plains proceeded to carve him. During the palmy days of the Kansas Jayhawkers, Newbern was taken prisoner by federal troops in Kansas. He escaped and joined the forces of Quantrill, serving as a scout and messenger. When the war closed, he went to California, where he engaged in prospecting in the mountains and deserts. He was successful and, at one time, accumulated a fortune of $300,000, which was lost in an unfortunate speculation. Fate camped on his trail, and his home was swept away in the San Francisco earthquake. He was run over by a buckboard drawn by a slow team after having escaped injury during years of fast riding on the racetrack. His hearing has been impaired by the ravages of years and the rattle of musketry, but at the age of 72, he has a wonderful reserve of courage and stock. He lives with his wife at the Olive Street number and philosophically accepts the degrees of destiny. That's the end of the interview, and you can tell, quite the tall tale. Now, if you're wondering what happened to Newbern, Pam shared this information at the conclusion of her email. She wrote, let me share this photograph to go along with it. My father remembered Samuel as a very cantankerous old man. I attach a picture of him taken in 1922 in Grand Mound, Iowa. The boy seated on the ground is my father, John Newbern. The dog is named Muggins. The girl is his sister, Violet, and the young boy is his brother, Lester. Samuel died in 1932 in Iowa at age 93, and the family buried him away from his former wife and other family members in Elmwood Cemetery in DeWitt, Iowa, because they didn't want him too near them. So there you have the story of Samuel Cox Newbern. Again, many thanks to Pam Newbern Boyle for sharing the story of her Civil War ancestor. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.